I had a private business that I was running that I had started in 1993, and but I always was doing research because I was very interested and actually quite knowledgeable about the left and what their whole agenda was. And when 9/11 happened, I felt like I really had to start talking about the things that I knew and the things that I learned when I worked in the White House budget office, which was my first job out of college. And so in 2002, I actually began writing, and I wrote for David Hackworth's Defense Watch newsletter, and he was a very well-known, one of the most decorated soldiers in history, and he was widely read throughout the Pentagon. So I wrote a lot of articles about military intelligence and stuff like that. And then I just kept writing, and pretty soon I got onto different platforms like American Thinker, Daily Caller, Breitbart, and many others, The Federalist, Washington Times, and all this kind of evolved really because I wasn't getting paid for any of that stuff. I was just doing it out of concern for our country. And in 2008, I wrote an article for American Thinker titled Barack Obama and the Strategy of Manufactured Crisis. And that article just went absolutely viral. If you Googled that name, it showed up on the first 25 pages of Google. It was on thousands of websites. Glenn Beck picked it up, and I had written at that point 5 articles about the manufactured crisis idea. And so he took all that stuff and turned it into a series of shows when he was on Fox, you know, and he had that 5 o'clock hour-long show. He did a whole big series on what's called the Cloward-Piven strategy of manufactured crisis. And so that really got me a name. I was still not getting paid for any of my articles, but finally I started getting paid, and then I was hired to do some consulting roles for different Washington, D.C. think tanks, especially the Center for Security Policy and the Capital Research Center and Accuracy in Media. And I wrote articles for them, and those I did get paid for. WorldNet Daily, which became a pretty big website at that time, asked me to write a book on vote fraud, and I wrote basically an 800-page encyclopedia of the left. That's what came out of it, and they were unwilling to publish it because it was so big. And so 2015 I was commissioned to write a book called The Red-Green Axis: Refugees, Immigration, and the Agenda to Erase America, and it was all about the refugee resettlement program. And myself and another person, Ann Corcoran, who had also written a short manuscript for the Center for Security Policy about refugee resettlement. Those 2 books made that issue a big deal for the 2016 election, and President Trump became very familiar with that issue. And so I wrote another Red-Green Axis 2.0 in 2019, which delved even deeper into the subject. And Charlie Kirk told me 2 years ago when he interviewed me for his show that was his favorite book. And so those books made a pretty big splash. And then in 2021, I wrote a book called Who Was Karl Marx? The Men, the Motives, and the Menace Behind Today's Rampaging Left. And it really was all about that. And Glenn Beck had me on his show to talk about it, and it went into the top 100 at Amazon, stayed there for a while, so that was a bestseller, frankly. And then Last year, I wrote Manufactured Crisis, the War to End America, and this is basically a compilation of everything that I've researched and learned about in the last 35 years. So this is probably my best book, and you can get it at Amazon. I have an author page at Amazon, James Simpson, and you can find it there. It's $20. It's a really good book. It explains everything that's going on in our country today, and so this is a very good book. And I recently completed my first novel, and this is a Christmas book. It's titled The Day Christmas Didn't Come, and it's a fantasy Christmas adventure story, really, a lot along the lines of the Chronicles of Narnia or The Hobbit. You know, it has another world, and it has all kinds of creatures in it, and it's a very good story. It has a very good Christian message.